With the new installment in the Quiet Place franchise fresh in everybody's minds today, let's revisit all the Easter eggs from the trailer and what we thought was going to happen. When you've got returns from fan favorite characters, Aliens 101, and more, there's a lot to think about. So let's think about it together. Probably one of the most intriguing theories we can speculate on from just the trailer, no spoilers here, has to do with the possibility of fan favorite characters returning to the franchise. Specifically, the inclusion of Digimon Hunso's character from A Quiet Place Part 2 places the movie firmly within the same location as the franchise's previous 2 installments. So by the time of Part 2, we know the character's name is Henry, and he has become the leader of an island community that is isolated from the monsters. So it'll be interesting to see how this movie sets up that whole development, if at all. So while this character does provide some connection to Part 2, exactly how this movie ties in, as of the time of this, unclear. Given its position in the timeline, over a year before all these movies takes place, Day 1 also allows other characters previously assumed dead to maybe make their return. We're going back in time. Despite sacrificing himself in the original movie, John Krasinski's Lee Abbott is perfectly placed to maybe make such a comeback. The Abbotts themselves were based in the same setting as the prequel seems to be, with their location away from major population centers, giving them the best chance of survival. Seeing as anybody left over from the Day 1 attack will inevitably try to flee New York City, it's possible they could meet Lee Abbott, albeit at an earlier point in the Quiet Place timeline. But such a comeback would create some problems logistically if you think too much about it. While Day 1's characters escaping could set them on a path to meeting the Abbotts, the series' established canon kind of prevents some of them from interacting. Like, let's think about Lupita Nyong'o's Sam character, if we're looking at the trailer, and Hunso's character. They appear nearly inseparable, featuring together in several tense moments. And if we're talking simultaneously in Part 2, it's clear that Hunso has never met the surviving family members before their arrival on the island. So let's say, John Krasinski does make a return and comes across the new duo, it can't be when he's with his family. Of course, there are ways that he could interact with the new characters by himself. Well, with the fun duo. It's easy to imagine Lee on a solo scouting mission, coming across the pair as they escape the city. Indeed, if we're going back to Part 2, it opens with Lee by himself on a shopping trip, providing a template for how such a scene might work. However, Day 1's gotta take care with the franchise's continuity, and avoid confusing key character stories for the sake of an Easter egg. And yes, Lee Abbott has been a popular member of the franchise, but his death and limited appearance in A Quiet Place and Part 2 provided a natural closure to his arc. So including him in a third movie, while initially gratifying, could risk undermining the purpose of the prequels, everything. It also could risk the expansion of the world of the Quiet Place films. By returning to the same established characters, Day 1 could risk making the franchise's whole universe feel smaller instead of expanding on it more. Although the Abbotts are once again justifiably popular, the series shouldn't be constrained by needing to return to them time and time again. So seeing as we've already got one returning character, I think that's enough. I think the prequel can do well with avoiding other returning characters. Here's a fun one. We have confirmed that aliens are aliens. If you're not aware, A Quiet Place's aliens, whose origins were kept somewhat mysterious in the first movie, are indeed aliens. Yes, the second installment did confirm that they literally fell from outer space, but the question of whether they came inside asteroids, spaceships, or other types of infested debris still up in the air. Was their sudden arrival a planned invasion, or an unhappy accident? So the second film's main cast of characters witness the horrors of societal collapse as grotesque creatures annihilate and slay everything within the general radius of a startling noise. In trying to stay alive, they learn how to use the deserted city to their advantage. Humankind was instantly screwed regardless, because the aliens' ultra-developed hearing capabilities, strength, and speed caught the humans by surprise, and any noisy location quickly went quiet. It's also implied that they crash-landed all over Earth and rapidly multiplied, but we're still missing a couple of details there. So we're hoping Day 1 expands on what they are now. Now that we know that they can be defeated. According to early reviews, thematically, if Part 1 and 2 were more akin to the iconic Alien film with Sigourney Weaver, small, quiet moments of terror, well, Day 1 is closer to Aliens in terms of big, loud, scary monster carnage, which, give me all of that. Out of all of the trailers that have come out in little snippets and pieces, the most recent trailer's footage offers considerably more insight into the goings-on of the movie than the original little bit of footage. For starters, it reveals 2 important things about Lupita's character, Sam. Number 1, she is shown delivering various lines of dialogue throughout the trailer. Like the first one made it seem like she maybe had a speech impairment, which follows up on the original movie's exploration of how a deaf character navigates the franchise's post-apocalyptic world. And then the second reveal is that her cat survives the original onslaught of monsters, which, oh my gosh, that cat better live. The new trailer also reveals that while Sam encounters various characters throughout her attempt to escape the island of Manhattan, she might spend a lot more time with another character, Eric, than originally implied. They are seen strategizing together in various different scenes throughout the little trailer, whereas her interactions with the one returning character that we know about seem limited to the same scene that they shared in the original footage. Also, all the newer footage, well, most recent footage, reveals that their escape plan might involve using the city's sewer tunnels, which could be very interesting. So John Krasinski always designed this series to be adaptable to multiple settings. The first two outings were largely pastoral, and the shift to an urban setting has been massively unsettling to see in the first couple of clips that have been released online and everywhere. Going back to our one returning character, Digimon, he teases that this entry will be even more upsetting, and that's largely due to the setting. It was devastating enough when it was just one family against all the aliens. Now we've got this entire city in some serious peril. The fact that the military has isolated Manhattan would seem to imply that there are maybe no monsters in the rest of the world, or well, at least the country, or maybe there are and the military's just not fast there. They have clearly spread to upstate New York at the time of the original movies, which take place more than 100 days later. But this could imply that maybe in the main timeline, or originally, the monsters might not be as widespread as the original seemed, especially considering they're canonically not really good swimmers, which means if you isolate one place, okay. Day One's plot is looking refreshingly straightforward, thankfully, which is great because it's a bit of a recurring problem in a lot of modern sci-fi movies, being bloated. So this approach being a little more straightforward is great to see. Yeah, despite the change of scenery and larger scale that comes with New York City, it's been designed as an apocalyptic survival movie with horror and classic creature feature elements, so super exciting. Also, the big city setting offers a number of opportunities the first two movies didn't have. We've got a lot of big action set pieces, with the exception of that great flashback in part 2, more oppressive sequences inside buildings, and once again, underground, we mentioned those tunnels, and also more humans. More carnage, more fun. And finally for today, even though John Krasinski directed the previous Quiet Place movies, this new film is helmed by Michael Sarnowski, who is best known for directing the 2021 film Pig starring Nicolas Cage. So this is Michael's first attempt at stepping into this crazy world. He landed in the director's chair after Jeff Nichols of Midnight Special dropped out due to creative differences. John mentioned, "Truly the only person I had in mind when asked whether I would hand this off was Jeff. I think he's one of the best filmmakers, Mud is one of my favorite movies, it's so real and intimate, it's exactly the sort of paints we're painting with in A Quiet Place. Very organic characters you fall in love with." Well, going back to Michael, he's an indie director coming in on a background of original movies, and then he's got to twist himself into a pretzel to fit this new vision into a pre-established one. But this is not a new concept, and hopefully this can produce a really great success. May I remind y'all, David F. Sandberg had a lot of success in both the horror and superhero genres with a background of independent projects. So thankfully John Krasinski set up Michael pretty well in this because he wanted to bring on somebody new who could bring a new tone to this movie, and this was said by Michael in an interview in New York City. Funny enough. And Michael was asked to bring some of the pig touch to this movie. John said, this is your movie. Make it how you want to make it. Also, even though John Krasinski won't be putting on his directing cap for this movie, he was still really involved with this prequel. This new story was a collaborative effort, Michael and John. Yes, the screenplay was from Michael, but at least he's openly gushed about being a fan of the first two films, so he knows what he's talking about. Apparently he hasn't talked to the producer, Michael Bay, too much, but Michael has said hey, I'm really hoping he's proud of what I'm making. As for the Jeff Nichols intended version of this prequel, our new director said, "I did see that script and I spoke to Jeff. He was really gracious and just being hey, here's my experience, don't feel any pressure to do this or that," and our new director was pretty clear saying "I need to find my own way into this story." Also, even after, Day One's coming out, there's still more Quiet Place to look forward to. A Quiet Place Part 3 was announced in February 2022, and it's set to come out next year. It'll be a direct sequel to Part 2. But as for that plot, who knows? Well, that's it from me, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ookie spooky girly. See y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.